Welcome to Shree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh, executive producer of Shree's Sunday New York Times Read Along, and we have a great show planned for today. We're going to start off with Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar, a physician. She'll be talking about COVID-19, of course, and then we'll be joined by two 13-year-olds, Diego Gonzalez and Samuel Bachman, who are going to be sharing, their perspective on COVID-19, their experiences with virtual learning, and their take on the news. They also have their own podcast, The Half Blood Report, which we'll be talking to them about as well. So please let us know where you're joining from and share this with your friends. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on our host, Shree Srinivasan, and we'll get the show started. Shree, good morning. How are you? I see that lovely view of New York City.
Great to be here and to see this wonderful lineup we have today. I'm showing you New York City. I'm on the Upper West Side, the epicenter of everything that's happening now. New York is used to being the epicenter of the world, but now we're the epicenter of the most cases in the United States. It's a gloomy, cold day. It's about 47 degrees Fahrenheit, about 7 degrees Celsius. And you can see the Hudson River and New Jersey over there. And you can't see any of the skyscrapers in Manhattan at the moment because of this fog and rain right now. I'm just going to step out onto the balcony. I'm barefoot, so it's really cold. It's Sunday, so you can't tell that the reason it's quiet is because of COVID-19. But there are still people at work. We often talk about how so many people are working from home. They are, but also in a building like this, our doormen are here, our porters, folks like that, in all the stores, the pharmacies. There are people working, the grocery store folks, as well as the people who deliver food now, the restaurants. So our hearts go out to all of them and the doctors, the nurses, the folks in the hospitals. We're so grateful for people who are working at this time. Do tell us where you're watching from and tag your friends. We want to know how your Sunday is going, how you're feeling. Please do tell us.
Absolutely. So we have several people watching.
I'm going to just flip the camera here so I can say hello to you. And there I am. And Neil, thank you for all your work on this read along. You've put together a terrific show for today, as you always do. And let's give a shout out to the people who make this possible with you behind the scenes, the production team.
Absolutely. All right, we have a great production team. Myself, along with Paula, Kiger, and Steve Taylor. Whenever you do a live stream, you always want to have people supporting you. So for the New York Times Read Along, I manage the Streamyard production, but then Paula Kiger engages with the audience on Facebook and drops links in there. And Steve Taylor does the same on LinkedIn. So please, again, share this with your friends, tag your friends so they see it. And looking forward to a great show. Shree,
yeah, absolutely. And we also want to thank our sponsors for
absolutely
supporting. This is so cool.
We have some great sponsors, and we really want to thank. We'll just take the banner up. We have some great sponsors: Strategy Focus Group, Muckrack, and Tweepsmap. So it really is great to have their support. Strategy Focus Group is a global team of human capital strategists committed to helping organizations solve people issues within their organization. They do that by working alongside you to solve your toughest problems and helping you capture your greatest opportunities. Muckrack, discover news as it breaks, easily generate reports and explore the work of journalists, podcasters, bloggers, and more. Muckrack software helps PR teams build stronger relationships with the media. And if you're a journalist, you might also be eligible for their free tools to identify trends and showcase your work. With Tweepsmap, build personalized relationships with your audience with focused, straightforward, actionable analytics. and all-in-one intelligent publishing platforms. Thank you to Strategy Focus Group, Muckrack, and Tweepsmap for their support of the New York Times read-along.
All right, Neil, well
to you.
done. And we also want to tell folks that we'd love to have more sponsors, because we believe in paying for the folks who do work like this. And we have a production team now. And the more sponsors we have, the more we can pay and support great work like this. So if you enjoyed our community that we have built from around the world, please do support us. And we want to thank Ron Thomas, who just checked in. He's watching live. Ron, thank you so much for your support of the read along, and just by being here, but also by becoming one of our first sponsors. Thank you. Paula's watching and working on this from Tallahassee, and Colin's in Johannesburg. And Colin started doing, by the way, these great sketchnoting where he live draws some of the sessions, and it's really been something great to see. Stefan's watching from Ramsey, New Jersey, Pradnya from suburban DC, etc. So Neil, we'll let you go. I know you've got to get to work on this, so thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Great show, Sri.
Thank you. And let me just, before we bring our first guest on, just to remind you what's new in the read along. If you haven't been here for a while, or you're new to the read along, we started just on Facebook, but now we are live on Facebook, live on LinkedIn, live on Twitter, and live on YouTube. So those are all new things that we've been able to do. And we also have these great sponsors, and that's the evolution of this digital product, the digital product that celebrates the print newspaper. Before I show you the New York Times from today and get to the paper, I wanted to show you something from the Wall Street Journal yesterday that I noticed for the first time. I don't know how long they've been doing this, but look at this, a notice to readers. The World Health Organization has said it's safe to handle newspapers during the coronavirus pandemic. The Wall Street Journal's printing plants and delivery services, though, are taking precautions, frequently cleaning equipment and facilities while reducing human contact with the newspaper. And a digital version of the print edition can also be viewed, etc. Isn't that interesting that they're doing that? In India, there's actually already a lawsuit. A online publication said that there is a possibility that the virus can live on newspapers, as they could on anything, I guess. And the biggest Indian newspaper company, the Publishers Times of India, has sued them for damaging their business by saying that newspapers are big in India. In my father's home, in a small capital city in Kerala, the smallest, one of the smaller states, they get 5-6 newspapers. That's how popular newspapers are. So interesting to see how that develops. I don't know if the New York Times has done anything like that or referred to this issue. Part of it may be you don't even want to bring this up and put that idea in people's minds, but I was fascinated to see the Wall Street Journal do that. And let me just show you yesterday's New York Times so you can see the evolution of the story. Plea for ventilators as Trump signs aid bill. This was the cover yesterday. And then today, not a 6-column headline, but testing blunders cost vital month in U.S. virus fight. Flawed kits, red tape, and leadership failures blinded nation to threat. Very, very important. Mark is watching from Durham, North Carolina. And the great empty. They are places that usually teem with humanity, and even in this void, their humanity prevails, a special section. And that's this section here. I'm sure there's some version of this online, but the power of the print publication will be seen in all its glory in that issue. So I'd like to bring our first guest on to say hello. And she is a doctor here in New York, Sujana Chandrasekhar. How are you, ma'am?
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. And you've been a guest on my daily COVID-19 call. I really appreciated your being with us when you came by.
Thank you. I enjoyed being there, actually.
And we should tell everybody a little bit more about your background. It's not enough just to say physician, because you were the representative and president of a major physicians organization, and you are also an ENT surgeon. So tell us a little bit about your background, and then we will talk about the news. Meanwhile, folks, prepare your questions. We want this to be an Ask Sujana Anything episode so that you can ask. We have her for about half an hour and get a lot of questions in. So please start posting your questions. Tell us where you're watching from and your questions in the different platforms: Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And you can also follow her. Please go ahead.
So thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm an avid watcher of the Sunday New York Times read along. And I agree with you. Sometimes having the print, especially the Sunday, the weekend section where they really spend a lot of time, is very helpful. I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. I was president of the American Academy of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery, which is a fancy way to say ear, nose, and throat surgery. And I'm in practice with ENT and Allergy Associates here in New York. We have 202 physicians in our group. About 40 are allergists, the rest are ENTs. And as you may imagine, all physicians are coming into contact with patients who are either have or suspected of having COVID. ENT complaints, fevers, runny nose, cough, trouble smelling, trouble tasting. These are all things that we are often the first line of contact for these patients. So all physicians are talking about this all the time. All physicians are trying to wrap our heads around the ever-evolving science, and we are just trying to do our part to help the patients get better who don't need to go to the emergency rooms or be admitted, and identify the ones who do.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your work, and thank you for all your colleagues doing. It's really so special that you are taking the time to talk to our readers. So we appreciate that. You're one, as you said, our viewers, you join us on Sundays, and we're so glad we have a really global conversation, including people who are awake in other parts of the world. They're especially on the West Coast where they maybe shouldn't be. Roberta asks, do you think it's okay to touch the papers? We're worried about virus on the paper. What do you say to that?
So, I've been looking at this a lot. There've been a lot of things about how you should dress, like to go to the grocery store, to unwrap your packages when you come home. I mean, paper is not the same as like a metal surface. So we know that metal surfaces, hard surfaces, seem to hold the virus for up to 8 hours or maybe a little bit longer. So those surfaces need to be cleaned. It seems, looking at all of the data, that you can in fact hold a newspaper. What you should not do, which, you were saying your dad reads 6 papers a day in Kerala. In India, nobody licks their tongue and touches the paper. Like, that's just not done. In America, that's done a lot. So if there's something dirty on the paper and you're licking your tongue, viruses, bacteria, bad things enter your body through mucous surfaces. That's why your eyes, which are moist, your nose, and your mouth are the main entry points for bad stuff. So you should read the paper. You should not be licking your fingers and reading the paper, and licking your fingers and reading the paper. So yes, I think that it's safe based on all the data I've read. I think once you're done, you should wash up and dispose of your newspaper the way you normally do.
Thank you, Doctor. Let's get more questions in from folks. Here's one that says, from Mark in North Carolina, speaking of questions, some folks are scared to go exercise because of the virus. How safe is it to go exercise? It depends, I guess. Many places are in lockdown, so you can't even get to a gym. But if you're in a city with a gym, and also talk about the importance of exercise, of course, that's so key.
Right. So the key to this, let's just step back for a second. So this is a virus that affects a huge cohort of the people it comes across. So we anticipate safely 50% of the United States population will be exposed and affected by COVID-19. Of those, 80% will have such a benign course they may not even know they had the disease. But the 20% will have a serious course. And of the 20%, a quarter to a half of those will end up with such severe pneumonia and lung disease that they will need to go on a ventilator. So that's what you're looking at. So you're looking at a huge number of people who will get this, a much smaller but significant portion who get really sick, and then about a quarter to a half of those super sick. The way you can prevent being in those bad categories is eating properly. So you really want to be eating healthy diet, lots of vitamins and minerals in your diet. You want to be drinking enough fluids, and the fluids are water and not alcohol, because alcohol dehydrates you. So fluid. You want to be exercising to the best of your ability. So if you don't have exercise equipment in your home, you can do stretches, you can do yoga, you can do chair push-ups and sit-ups. You can repurpose the furniture in your home to be doing significant exercise. If you can get out, and you should get out either by yourself or maximally with one other person who lives in your home. You can go for a run, you can go for a brisk walk or a jog. But I would say going to the gym right now, even if you can find a gym that's open, I would be very hesitant. There are a lot of bodily fluids that mix at the gym in general, and I might do my exercise at home or in the outdoors, again, by myself or with one other person. In terms of vitamin supplements, vitamin C, Linus Pauling won a Nobel Prize for knowing that vitamin C helps us stay healthier. So that's reasonable. Zinc is reasonable. Antioxidant, kind of anti-inflammatory foods are very helpful. I have a friend, Dr. Jonathan Aviv, who's all about anti-inflammatory. He's a brilliant ENT surgeon, and he deals with the voice a lot. So he's got me hooked on this watermelon cucumber blendy. It's delicious, and it's reduction in inflammatory markers.
Okay, thank you, Doc. This is so great to get these answers from an expert like yourself. Folks, you're watching right now. Our guest is Sujana Chandrasekhar, MD. She's an ENT surgeon, and she is in a secret location, safe. And
I'm in the bunker.
Yeah, and she's with her family. Thank you so much for getting up and being with us this morning. Please tag your friends. Please share this, folks. An example of the great conversation we have every Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Tag your friends. And I want to make sure the doctor had a chance to share this with her community as well. If you've had a chance to share it on Facebook. If you haven't, we'll let you do that. Okay, good. We have another question. Diane asks, have heard from a non-MD that red or bloodshot eyes can be an early sign of COVID-19. Do we know if that's true? And then you can also address the early signs that seem to have been confirmed: lack of smell, sudden lack of smell, lack of taste.
Yeah. So the other thing we haven't addressed is that everybody is in a low or medium state of sort of panic and anxiety right now. So we're not getting the sleep we need. We're not getting the rest we need. We are, in fact, going from going to work to being on our devices all the time. All of these things can make your eyes fatigue, can make your eyes look worse than they normally look. We have not seen just red eyes or bloodshot eyes as a marker. That may be more of a marker of eye strain or poor rest, which is unfortunately afflicting all of us. The markers that we are seeing so initially we said fevers. So fevers 99, 100 and above. Cough that is persistent. So it's also allergy season. So if you have your normal allergy cough, let it be. But a persistent cough, and a productive cough, which is when you cough and there's some mucus that's rattling down in there. A postnasal drip, which is also seen in allergy season. But what we're seeing, and what Shri alluded to, was we're seeing a significant reduction in the sense of smell or a lack of sense of smell. So when you say also lack of sense of taste, taste is 90% smell. So when your nose is blocked in the normal course of events, everything tastes bad because basically you're not smelling your food. In COVID, this seems to be a significant marker for the disease. So if you suddenly have a dramatic decrease or absence in your sense of smell, which correlates to an absence of sense of taste, that's really important. I would, my recommendation at that time, with no other symptoms, quarantine yourself at home, check your temperature, check your breathing, be alert that you probably have the disease, and you are hopefully in that 80% where it just kind of gets better if you just stay home, drink well, eat well. The other thing we're looking at, which came out this week, is we're seeing more cardiac issues in patients with inflammation around the lining of the heart. So if you're having chest pains or change in your heart rate that is persistent, that is something that I would definitely call to your primary care physician to see what needs to be done. That is actually somewhere, like in my practice, we're doing virtual visits now, which are imperfect but very helpful because we can assess you with a video chat like this, where we can see each other and get a sense of what kind of treatment you need, whether you need supportive treatment at home, whether you need to go to the ER. That's something that I would focus on talking to your internist about. I have to tell you, be really cognizant of the anxiety we're all feeling. I had a really long week at work. It's scary. It's a scary time to be in the world. It's a scary time to be a healthcare professional. Friday, I worked all day with that N95 mask on that kind of sucks. It's like a Darth Vader mask that sucks to your face and it blocks your nose and you can't breathe well. And it kind of adds to the anxiety. And I have to say, my heart was beating a little too fast for me for a little while. I did some sort of yogic breathing. I drank some water. I took a little bit of a walk. I kind of calmed myself down to make sure that I was just having a normal physiologic response to my concerns as opposed to some illness. I hope that helped.
Coming in, I know we only have a couple of minutes left with you, Doctor, here. What is your advice to folks who are separated from their families or people they want to see, and they're worried about the kind of medical advice they're getting, right? I have a friend whose kid was diagnosed, but he's away in college and was feeling so helpless. What do you do about that? And you're worried about the kind of information you're getting.
So I think that's a great question. There's a lot of information and there's a lot of misinformation, and then there's a lot of evolving information. So, like I tell my residents when I'm teaching them in the hospital, never take one source of information. So you got to resource your information, make sure you're hearing it from from 2 or 3 credible sources when you get it. If you are separated from your family, I think we are living in an age where technology makes it a little bit less difficult. So you can FaceTime. Even before this, when my children were away at college, I knew that if I could FaceTime them in a minute, I would know if they were okay or not, because you can just tell by looking at somebody. So I think using technology to actually see each other is very helpful. My dad turned 88 yesterday, and he's in Delaware with my baby sister. My one sister is in White Plains, and I'm here. And we had a 3-way FaceTime birthday party where each of us baked a cake. My sister wrote a song, and we all kind of sang, and we were together, even though we were socially distant or physically distant. So I think using technology to sort of decrease some of that anxiety and distress from being apart from each other is very helpful. I think, talking to the family who's there and seeing what their resources are by them. So if your child is away at college, there is student health service that has to be available to them. There is the local hospital that has to be available to them. And frankly, they could do a video chat if they have let's say an ear, nose, and throat or allergy problem. They could call my office, do a video examination with me so that you have a doctor actually looking at them to make sure that they are in fact okay and they can kind of hold still. Taking your own temperature twice a day is actually very effective screening measure. So you could do that at home while you're in relative self-quarantine. And by relative, I mean only going out as absolutely necessary, like to get groceries.
Thank you. And I also know that in the middle of all of this, you also have to be worried about your business, right? You're a businesswoman running a business at this time. Tell me how that's going. A lot of us who run businesses like I do, we're so concerned about the way we can support our families and our colleagues, because it's important that we do that.
I think that's a great question. I mean, we are seeing sort of this global quiet, let's say, in businesses. Our company made the difficult decision to take our 40 plus offices and streamline them into 6 regional offices, and then do everything else by virtual visit, by telemedicine visit for the next perhaps 3 to 4 weeks. And what that does is we haven't mentioned yet flattening the curve. So let me talk about flattening the curve. Flattening the curve means you take all these huge number of cases and you spread them over time. And when you spread them over time, you do a few things. You reduce the burden on an absolutely overburdened healthcare system in terms of ER, intensive care unit hospitals. You give time for treatments to be developed and for identification to be developed, and even self-quarantining. If you look at in the Times today, they talk about why Germany is doing well, and it has to do with how they've identified target cases and identified the people they could be in contact with. So in an attempt to help flatten the curve, we've shut down a majority of our offices for the moment, and we are able to deliver the care that will help keep patients away from unnecessary trips to the emergency room by talking with them on the phone, or if they have an ENT emergency, bringing them into one of the regional offices. Like, I'm manning the office at such and such a time this week, and my colleagues at another time, and therefore taking care of them. So if you have a nosebleed, if you have whatever you need that's an emergency, we can take care of you rather than send you to an ER that's overburdened where you may be at risk for contracting this virus that you don't have. I thank you, Chetna. I see, as an ER doc, I completely agree. Use telemedicine and only come in as needed. And we are really trying to do that. I started by saying ENTs see a lot of the complaints that people have related to corona. So if we can screen them and only send the real cases to the ER, that helps flatten the curve. That helps us who are working with not enough PPE, which is personal protective equipment, and not enough physicians and nurses. If the healthcare workers go down, Elon Musk can't manufacture healthcare workers, right? So we have to make sure that our patients, that all of you have access to healthcare workers. I think somebody else asked on the stream, what about aerosolization of particles? Yes, that is a huge concern. So you really don't want to be using certain types of sprays in public. In the ENT offices, we often will spray medications into the nose before we do certain types of examinations. And we have all across the country, and I think across the world, stopped doing that because we know that we can, with that small amount of pressure, we can actually drive virus particles into the atmosphere, which makes them more contagious. So I think doing that. I had a patient who asked me about their Cpap machine. So they have sleep apnea, and they have to use their constant positive airway pressure, their Cpap machine, in order to breathe comfortably at night and sleep comfortably. That can aerosolize. So if you're doing that, you should be sleeping in your own room, and be distant from any other person who could inhale those aerosolized particles. Somebody else said they were walking up and down 25 flights every day. Bully for you, man. That's perfect. That's awesome.
To hear you, and one of my friends who's watching right now texted me while this is going on to say you are wonderful, and it's just so great to have you with us. I think
I paid them. I just Venmoed them some money.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I want to say to other doctors watching, because I don't want to trouble Sujana every Sunday, but I'd like to have on my shows as many times as possible a medical person just with us, because anytime there is a opportunity like this, people asking folks like me medical questions, and I shouldn't be answering them, but I'm being forced to answer them in a way. I also wanted to just show you this article online. This is going to show up here, and the article is "Why I'm Not Leaving New York." And I wanted to ask you about people who are thinking about leaving places like this. And we're seeing in India the massive, shockingly disturbing images of people walking out of the big cities where the epicenters are. Talk about that, please.
So I think the pictures from India are in fact shocking and horrifying. They're walking hundreds of miles, I guess you would say in India, kilometers away in huge groups. So it's like the pictures you saw with the separation during independence. It's really
partition.
They're very frightening, very evocative and frightening pictures. I would say that you can quarantine in place. You can shelter in place as well in a big city as you can anywhere else. I think the person who said they're taking the steps, if you are able to go down in the steps, in the staircase instead of the elevator when you need to go outside, I think New York has beautiful parks and beautiful open spaces. And frankly, that influx of people who come into Manhattan has stopped. So I think all boroughs can calm down a little bit. What you should not do, we saw a terrible picture from the 7 train earlier this week, jam-packed of people, some with masks and gloves, some without masks and gloves. I think really maintaining that 6-foot physical distance from people. If you leave, the communities you go to may ask you to self-quarantine for 2 weeks and may not have the support you need if you get sick there. So I think if you are quarantining in place, because so many physicians, it's not just my practice, but so many physicians have really adopted telemedicine. The government has made it possible for us to do so, which is very helpful. I think eating healthy, drinking healthy, getting some exercise, using your common sense, and then reaching out to your physician virtually before you go and wait in a crowded and possibly infected ER waiting room makes the most sense.
Thank you. We're going to let you go, but I just want to sort of keep you here because there's comfort in your voice and authority that's so important. Paula just posted a comment highlighting the fact that everyone who's commenting in our streams, they're not doctors, right? We do have some, but most of them are not, or nurses or anyone with medical knowledge. And so we all have to be careful what we're spreading, what we're sharing.
Yes.
And very careful, especially
check
WhatsApp.
Your sources. You're a journalist. I'm preaching to the choir. Check your sources.
Right. and it looks so easy to be able to share, and it is so easy to share, and we have to be careful what we're sharing. And I just want to tell folks that Sujana was, I mentioned, on my daily COVID-19 call. So this is something new I started doing on lockdown. And suddenly we're on day 16 today of the lockdown in New York. And every Sunday night, I try to do a positivity episode. And we're going to have Dr. Pamela Cantor, who's a child psychiatrist. And she is a doctor. So she will be also with us tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time. If you can't join us live, you can join us later. It'll be live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And please do spread the word. 9 p.m. Eastern. If they can find me, they can get that information. And especially, Doc, it's true that kids are going to, may not, all the research shows that the kids are not directly as vulnerable as older populations, but the mental aspects of this crisis are affecting kids sometimes worse than they are the adults.
Yeah, I think we have to be really cognizant of how this is affecting our emotions across generations. And I know that the New York Times had a really beautiful podcast earlier this week for children, trying to explain COVID to children with questions from children. And I recommend that you listen to that with your kids if you have small kids at home. It's really hard to explain why they can't go to school and why it's not like a snow day where they can go over to Billy's house and why they can't all play in the parks, right? That's really hard to explain. And I think getting over our fears by understanding it better and kind of contributing some calm to the atmosphere is very helpful if you can do it. And I know you had my friend Marina Kurian on earlier this week on your COVID talk. She's brilliant. And I have to give a shout out to her big sister, Ray, who saw me wandering in the halls at Stuyvesant High School in 1977 and took me under her wing and befriended me. And I think that kindness runs in Marina and Ray's family. Her mom was a nurse at Mount Sinai. Her dad and my dad are really good friends. And I think that kindness is what we're seeing. We're seeing silence in the air. We're seeing cleaner air to breathe, but we're seeing kindness between strangers and friends. And I think, Neil and I were talking, there's a way to find positivity even in this really terrible time.
Yeah, no, I agree. Before you go, I wanted to tell everybody that I've relaunched my newsletter. Several people have asked where it's gone. And so we relaunched it and it just went live at 8 a.m. today. And would love, if you didn't find it in your inbox, that means you're not signed up for the newsletter. Just email me, sri@sri.net, or you can, we'll give you the URL. It's bit.ly/SriNote, bit.ly/SriNote, so that you can get access to it. But I wanted to show you the lead item in my newsletter, and you can see that here. And we called it Share with Care for today. Stay home, stay healthy, stay safe, and be mindful of what you share online. And look at this meme. Right? For the first time, we can save all the human race by just watching TV all day. Don't screw it up. That's all we're asking people to do. Do not leave the house if you can, in fact, stay home. And people are still not doing it. So there's a lot to read and understand on here. I'm very proud to pull this together with my friend Zach in Prague. And here we also link to the wonderful Instagram Live that Dr. Fauci did with Stephen Curry. And also we have a news you can use section and an archive of all the COVID-19 calls and things you can listen to, and a promo for the read along. So it's all in one place, and would love your comments and thoughts on this. And it's just called Sri Sunday Note. And you can, if you haven't subscribed to it, please write to me, sree@sree.net. And I'd love to have you on this. We'll be writing to you every Sunday with things you can use and news you can use. But Doctor, thank you so much. This has been a conversation with Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar, an ENT surgeon in New York, and doing her part. And we want to hear what part you're playing and what you're doing to be out there and helping folks in this complicated time. Sudha says Dr. Sujana's presentation is very informative and educational. Thanks for being articulate. And Chetna, a fellow ER doctor, says, Thank you. And Chetna, get in touch with me. I'd love to have you on my daily show some point. And Elise says, thank you for your conversation. We've had people watching from Italy and from around the world. We're thinking of those places. I never thought that New York would be one of those places that we used to read about and hear about. So shocking. I wish you and your family the very best. And thank you as we transition to our next set of guests. And please follow her and find her and follow her and look up her company. We'll ask Sujana to go into the Facebook comments and respond as best she can if she has a few minutes of time.
I'll do that.
Chetna is there as well. She's an ER doctor, so watch for her as well. And by the way, I'll just say at this time, what I'm trying to do is whenever I use the word doctor, I mean a physician and not a PhD. And that's something that I'm trying to do because obviously, we have great friends who are PhDs and are very knowledgeable, but they're not medical doctors, and people get confused by that wording sometimes. And so for the duration of this crisis, I'm going to go out of my way to make sure we identify people who are MDs and equivalent or nurses and others, as opposed to doctors of other subjects.
I think being as clear as possible, knowing who you're getting your information from, is really, really helpful at this time. So thank you so much, Shri. I love it. I feel very, very posh.
Okay, thank you and good luck. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right, folks, thank you for watching. We're now going to transition to our next speakers. But before they come on, please tag your friends. Please hit share. The number of people watching has increased throughout this. And I'm going to look at the newspaper with my guests. They're two young podcast hosts, and they're going to tell us their story. You're going to love meeting them. We're going to talk about the paper. We're going to get your questions in and comments in about the news. And please comment in the platform you're watching. If you're used to watching us only on Facebook, we're also now on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube as well. So we can be on multiple platforms. And some of you know my dog, our dog, Tara is here, and she's doing her part. We used to take her out for 3 or 4 walks every day, and now we're taking her for just 2 walks, and she seems to be holding up. Right, Tara? She seems to be holding up so far. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Very, very grateful. Don't forget to tune in 9 p.m. Eastern tonight for our weekly positivity talk with a child psychiatrist. And Rupa is back as well. Rupa, you can wave from the back over there. Oh, she's got her mask on and her gloves. She's modeling good behavior. And we didn't get a chance to talk about masks with the doctor, but there is, deferring advice depending on the continent you live in. The medical industry in different places is saying different things. But let's switch over and bring on our guests.
Hi.
All right, that's
Hello.
Diego and Samuel. Hello, how are you?
I've been better.
As good as one
Tell us
can
where
be.
you're watching from. Tell us where you're watching from.
So I'm at the epicenter of the crisis. I'm in New York, but I'm in my apartment, quarantined right now. And Samuel, where are you?
Yeah, so my parents wanted to make sure my grandparents were going to be okay during the crisis. So we're actually staying with my grandparents in Pennsylvania. But we do usually live in the city. So yeah, that's where I'm right now.
Okay, let's tell people a little bit about your background. What do you folks do? What schools you're in, and also why we thought we should have you on this show to talk about the news.
So my background before this, I did a lot of entrepreneurship stuff. So I'd attend hackathons, and kind of get out into the community. And I became really interested in learning about these new ideas and what was going on. And then actually in July of last year, Samuel calls me and he goes, I have this idea for a podcast. And I go, I'm listening. This sounds entrepreneurial. And he pitches the idea of the Half-Blood Report. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. And then we started the podcast. It started off with it was just me and him, and we published 2 episodes. And then summer happened, and we didn't publish an episode for 3 months, I believe. And then in September, he calls me and he goes like, "Hey Diego, remember that podcast that we had?" And I go like, "Oh yeah, that was great. Whatever happened to that?" And then he goes like, I don't really know. And then from there on out, in October, we decided to start getting serious about the podcast. And now we're putting out an episode a week.
Terrific. Tell us what the Half-Blood Report podcast is about.
Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of trail back a bit and then but so I am a film student. Even before I became a film student, I did a lot of editing with my friends on fun side projects. But besides that, I'm also a huge fan of the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan, all his series and books. And so then I was kind of inspired to put 2 and 2 together and say, hey, maybe I can use my editing skills to make a podcast about the Percy Jackson series, especially since Rick Riordan started his own imprint. And so what we do on the podcast is we discuss the newest stuff that's happening in the fandom of Percy Jackson, and that arranges, and we often do interviews with Rick Riordan presents authors or authors under the imprint. Yeah.
Okay, terrific. And you guys are 13, is that right?
Well, Diego, so I'm actually 15, but Diego can speak for that.
I made a small mistake when I was reading over the promo post, and I thought Samuel was 14, but I forgot that he actually turned 15 recently, and I was like, 13 to 14, that seems like an okay mistake. I'm not going to have somebody redo everything. But then I realized he was 15. I was like, crap.
All right. Well, that's okay. We admire your entrepreneurialness and the fact that you're working to share information and also understand all this technology, which is really important. Tell us what it's like to be in online school all of a sudden.
So I think it's strange, because if you'd asked me last year about how schooling online would be like, I would have said, oh yeah, my grandkids would be doing it. If not my kids, they're going to be doing school through Skype or whatever. But I think now actually doing it, you actually see how much worse it is than just real in-person going to a location school. Because online school, I first off, it's just not the same in a classroom, and also it doesn't have the same social experience, I would say, as when you're in there with a bunch of other people surrounding you, instead of just looking at a bunch of faces on your screen. And I think it's also a lot harder to manage your time, because it's not like a regular school day, because teachers are making everything assigned, all your classwork, making them assigned by the end of the day, instead of making them assigned at the end of the class or the end of school. But then some teachers will actually do the opposite and try to make it as close to school as normal. And then it gets confusing, and you have to make sure you understand what each teacher is doing. And so I think it definitely needs a lot more, the system of online schooling needs a lot more work before it ever comes into normal use. And I think it's a lot more challenging to go to online school during this time, although it's definitely necessary to get. I mean, I would rather go to online school than get my whole family sick, but it's not. I think I would say after COVID-19, online school is not going to become like the next big thing. No one's going to say, "Oh yeah, it was so great during COVID-19. Let's continue this."
Thank you. What about you, Diego?
Well, for me, it was the same as well. My school made a really quick transition. So they kind of went from Friday. It was in-person classes, and then all of like that week, the Friday, I believe let me get a date on that.
It's okay. Don't worry about the date. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. But a couple Fridays ago, and they were all like, "Oh yeah, nothing's gonna happen, but just in case it does, here we're gonna give you the Zoom link. This is how it's gonna happen." And they're doing all the preparation, but they're going like, "No, no, 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 it's never gonna happen." And then Tuesday, they're like, "Okay, yeah, it happened. Zoom calls start Wednesday. We expect to see you guys there at 8:08 in the morning." And I was like, "Whoa, that was fast." There wasn't any like delay time there. Like we had Monday off, and then Tuesday they announced it, and then Wednesday classes started again. So it was kind of sudden for me. And the first day it was like, oh wow, I could get used to this. And the second day was kind of like, eh. And then the third day it got even worse. But I think the main problem with it is how individual teachers adjust to doing online schooling. So for some teachers, I know in my school, it was a lot quicker. They got what was going on. They just switched right over. And some teachers, some classes lend themselves to online schooling. But other classes such as like art or science, it's harder to do like labs and hands-on learning when you're not really in person. So it was a lot harder for some teachers. The other thing is that certain teachers, I won't name names, think that because we're at home, that means that class periods no longer exist and we have infinite time. So I got a couple days ago, I got like a 2-hour long assignment that we were supposed to do in a 55-minute period. And just because I'm at home doesn't mean that time goes faster or slows down. Time is the same. And I think that's another thing that we got to keep in mind, that it's not like we're sitting at home and it's like, oh, you go to school like this and then, and that means you have all this time. It's the same 8 to 3 school day with the same time afterwards. It's just your homework is also classwork and it's also homework. And then you suddenly find yourself with a lot more work than you would have had if you'd normally been in school.
Right. I want to just read some of the nice comments that people have said about you. Great job, kids. Love these kids, so articulate and honest. Great job, Samuel. Geeta says, amazing duo, mind-boggling. Wow, in dearth of words to express how amazing these guys are. Simply wow. All right, folks, stick around. Please tag your friends. I hope our 2 podcasters have invited all the teenagers in the world to join us on your various platforms. I'm now just going to look at the paper and share and read the paper comment as we go along. So let's go right into the paper here. Front page, testing blunders cost vital month in U.S. virus fight. Ambulance calls inundate America's epicenter. This is a big issue. Chief scientist draws venom from the right. And this is about Anthony Fauci. And suddenly, you know, everyone who's been saying all these good things about Anthony Fauci, because we recognize the humanity in him, the expertise in him, the right and trolls and folks who find him even slightly disagreeing with the president are now attacking him. It's horrifying and ridiculous that that's happening. Hard decisions for Americans as bills roll in, and that's after a 2 trillion bill was signed. So that tells you that that's not going to be enough money. Trump weighs a quarantine, then retreats. This is an example of why we need Dr. Fauci. Our hands are in the our lives are in the hands of the 79-year-old, because President Trump yesterday just said we're going to have a quarantine for the 3 years. We're going to think about a quarantine for the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And then he, after the backlash, he said, okay, I won't do it. And that's not how you govern at any time. It's not how you govern at this time. Driving the long haul and sensing a slowdown, Darrell Woolsey, who drives a truck with his dog, Rusty, by his side, is staying on the road as others wait on the virus. And just so thinking about truckers who help power this economy. It's going to be very sad. They've already been told they're going to lose their jobs to self-driving trucks, and now things like this also come in. Madrid falls after 32 months of war, and this is from a memorable headline from 1939. And Madrid and other parts of Spain, as in other parts of the world, they're all in a war right now. And we're just flipping through the New York Times. Folks, what do you kids, are you helping more at home now than you did before because you have maybe a little more time?
Oh yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of.
Even if I don't have more time, my mom still makes me.
As I mentioned, time is irrelevant. Work.
Yeah, I understand that. I hear that. We're making our kids do more stuff as well. And then here is a story from, an ad for the census. And getting right census numbers is so important, but you're now going to have people go into people's homes to take census, to do census work. That's going to be very, very difficult. Putin's intent to celebrate war victory and his own rule puts veterans at risk. It's amazing how a country like Russia, we don't hear much about what's happening there, in part because they control the flow of information. A different kind of Brexit for Poles seeking the comfort of home. Generation unscathed by past crises is jolted into political awakening in this story out of China. And snowbirds deliberate, go home or stay put. This is a question a lot of people are asking. As companies seek federal virus money, businesses boom for lobbyists. And we hope that they're able to help good folks who need the help. Federal office pledge inquiry into rationing of healthcare, because that's certainly something we want to avoid. Just story after story. It's so amazing what the New York Times has pulled together. Economic hardship is one of their subheads. Another is propaganda. And every Monday, we tackle the issue of economic hardship on my daily COVID-19 call. And so please join us on Monday for that. If you're ever wondering when my next COVID-19 call is, you can just go to the top of my Twitter bio. It will always be listed there. And when someone asks me, why don't you pick a time and stick to it? Partly because I want to be able to offer my great guests different timings so they can pick when they can come. The editor of the Wall Street Journal has said he will do it. The the CEO of Edelman Worldwide is going to be joining us. So some really great people are going to be coming, and I want to give them that flexibility. And also, unlike the New York Times Read Along, where we have sponsors and we have some money coming in, I can then justify, spending a set time on this. The daily COVID calls are an effort of just love. And so I would love to be able to do that. If you have any sponsorship ideas, or someone who would want to sponsor that, let us know. We've had 200,000 viewers over the first 16 days of the show. These days, female lion tamers crap the whip. So this is an unusual story out of Egypt in the middle of all this. And so this is an international section not about COVID-19. And then Venezuela, a broken place, broken country, and a broken system. And full-timers in towns full of seasonal homes send message, keep out. And this is a story that we're seeing unfold in many places where they don't want outsiders coming in. And we're just going to look at very quickly at the obits. Tom Coburn, the Dr. No of Congress, protesting the decision to televise Schindler's List in prime time. That's one of the things he did. He frustrated Democrats and Republicans alike by his propensity to block bills. And Stuart Gordon, whose horror films were serious and hilarious, dies at 72. Movies like Reanimator and others that he made. Rap is another. So I'm not familiar with those movies, but some of you may know him. And then a very important obituary of Joseph Lowery, who is known as the Dean of the Civil Rights Movement, top aide to Dr. King. And he defied the Ku Klux Klan death threat as bullets whizzed by. And lovely photo here of Dr. Lowery getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Barack Obama. I try not to get political, but to see that people like him have gotten this, and then to see Rush Limbaugh get the same award from President Trump is just outrageous. Let's leave the obits behind. Since we have our 13 and 15-year-olds, let's talk a little bit about the news through the eyes of the print-only New York Times Kids section. And I know these folks are a little bit, maybe a little older than the age group this is aimed at, but I'd love to hear their thoughts on this. First of all, dogs or cats?
I feel like any answer will definitely result in backlash from our fans. So
Diego, I have a plan. All right.
Okay, ready?
To keep people from attacking us in the comments, to stop the controversy, you say cats, I say dogs.
No. I say dogs, you say cats.
And you guys can fight over that. So let's go in and see what this looks like. So it's just dogs versus cats, and look at all this stuff. So first, let me ask you guys, not about the section itself, but what is it about young people and the news today? How are they getting their news? You guys seem super plugged in, but your general friends in your general school age group, are they? How are they getting their news these days? Let's talk pre-COVID first.
So I think pre-COVID, it was mostly just social media, and or like the occasional like late night host saying something about the news. I feel like that was the main source of news pre-COVID. But I feel like now people are like looking more to get more news, because of course now news is important and relevant to them. And they're also stuck at home. So I feel like they also have kind of the obligation to go see the news and what's going on in the world. But definitely before it was social media. But now it might be maybe even print sources or just quick Google searches into the new tab.
Thank you. Let's get Sam in here. Sam, what about you about the news?
Yeah, I think something that makes the New York Times attempt at a kid section really important, regardless of, we can discuss of whether or not they do a good job at it. But I think it's just really important to have that, because kids, not even my age, like a few years older, maybe multiple years younger, they get their news from like Apple News alerts or an Instagram post or a tweet, I should say. And not that these aren't always reliable, and of course there are a ton of kids like Diego and myself who do try to educate themselves, but I think that the fact that having a news that isn't like fit into a character limit for kids is important, because I mean, kids are the future. So I mean, they should know about the present if you're going to make a better future. And so I think it's important to definitely educate yourself about the news in the best way possible as a kid. You don't have to look specifically for stuff that's marketed at kids. I like subscribe to all the New York Times like updates. I listen to the Daily, and so I think just doing stuff like that to keep you at least somewhat informed is important to do as a kid, even if you like to look at the single Instagram post that's probably biased. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on the news on kids.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure you guys like the idea of them talking to getting Stephen Curry to talk to Dr. Fauci. Sound like a great idea. And here we go. I just want to compliment the Times Kids section. Look at the design work here. And what they've done is basically they have 2 issues, 2 different topics, and then they have made it so that, look at the quality of the presentation here. So yeah, it's very, very good. It's very appealing.
I like reading those because they just look like you should read them, which is something that I find This is kind of going down a rabbit hole here. But I always find that when I look at when I visit my parents at work, or I see the things that the computers that they're using, the programs that they're using, the articles that they're reading, I just always find them to be so clunky and filled with things and not appealing to look at. And it's nice to see things that are more interesting to look at, because you just feel more drawn to them. And it's also easier on your eyes. I feel
Sure.
like that's
Folks, I
much,
just want to
but-
make a folks, I just want to tell everybody that some folks are texting me that they're having trouble staying on their Facebook, and that's partly because there's so much traffic now on all these platforms. So you have to be thinking about, if there's a particular source of information you want, are there other ways to get it? And because we're live, not just on Facebook, you can go over to my Twitter. If you can't find us on Twitter, you can go over to my YouTube or to my LinkedIn. So it's really important for you to think about how to get your information. The feed that you're looking for may be in different places. And so whenever I'm live, I'm on at least 2 other platforms. So I encourage you to go and find me on YouTube. It might be a steadier shot in terms of the way the information is coming to you. So definitely look for this, and our production team will make sure we remind you throughout that we're on multiple platforms in case you can't find us or you're having trouble with the main Facebook or the main Twitter feed. This is that great empty section, and there's a certain beauty in the expanses of public space now vacant. There's also a reminder, true beauty comes when the builders roam the built, by Michael Kimmelman. He's the architecture critic of the New York Times. And look at these photographs, just amazing. There's a picture in Sao Paulo as people bang pots and pans to protest the government. And you may have heard that the government under Bolsonaro, he's been exaggerating. He's accused the media of exaggerating, and he's blaming the governors who are taking action. That sounds very familiar to what's happening in New York. Look at this photo of London, and then a photo of Yangon, Myanmar, Seoul, South Korea, and Moscow in Russia. The seats were empty for rehearsal at the Tchaikovsky Concert Hall and remain so for the online performance. And here is Beijing, a lone diner in a neighborhood known for its nightlife. So poignant, beautiful, and haunting. New York, the lights were on in Times Square, but no one was around. And Rome and Sydney and San Francisco and Seattle and Yogyakarta in Indonesia, Tehran, just stunning to see all of this. Milan and New Delhi and Tokyo. And this is, folks, it feels like a science fiction film, and we're living in it now.
It's crazy.
Boys, go ahead. Do you have a thought as you look at this?
Sam?
That's a lot to take in. I wanted to address something that I saw in the comments, that a lot of people, some people I saw talking about how testing has been canceled, and that's kind of good news. And I also I think that it's kind of important to actually do it, because trying to run testing online has a lot of problems. So I'm gonna just use a quick little example. Diego, I hope you don't mind if I bring you into this. So let's say Diego and I take the test online, but because there's not really a good way to monitor online testing, then let's say I totally cheat and Diego doesn't, but even I'm such a bad cheater that I still get a worse grade than Diego. And then let's say 4 years from now, when we're applying to colleges, let's say we applied to the same college, and the college is like, oh, they happen to take this test during the year that testing was online. So then they might look at Diego and say, oh, he got a higher grade, he probably cheated. And so I think just removing stuff like that is important, even if online testing is kind of essential to the way we run the schools modern day.
1 second, Sam. I just want to make sure we're clear. We're talking about educational testing because the word testing is also now applied to everything to do with COVID.
No.
So that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
testing we're-
Oh, I'm sorry for any confusion about that. Yeah.
No. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. It says, Reshma says, I wish I could go out and buy a hard copy of the New York Times right now. Neil, I hope
Oh,
you'll
snaps.
take a screenshot of this. And I want to send that to our friend Tom Jolly, who's the editor of the print section of the New York Times. If you can pull that back up, I'll take a screenshot of that comment about wanting to go and get the earlier comment. There we go. I'm going to take a screenshot. And we're thinking of our friend Mike Connors, who is who runs the New York Times printing plant and gave us a wonderful read-along tour live from the printing plant last year. And we hope to do that again at some point, but I'm just thinking of all the staff and everybody we met there working so hard. And Sylvia says, smart use of layout to tell photos from the story. Now here's a different story. Why are tourists drawn to Chernobyl? And that people go into this very scary place and are visiting. And what I wanted to comment is that I've been saying to anybody who asks me about New York, that when you go out there, it feels like you're going to Chernobyl because you don't know what's poison is in the air and what's going to kill you or do long damage, but there are people around. And if you haven't seen the HBO documentary, mini series, a really important mini series on HBO, I recommend it to everybody. It's a little too real at the moment,
Magazine
but worth seeing. And here's the behind the cover. Sorry, I'm just going to let the volume speak, let the audio come up.
Since moving to a work from home location, it's been a strange week and it's been a strange process.
Not only were we trying to create this magazine, but we were also, as a staff, trying to absorb the news of everything happening in the world. And so it was challenging both to figure out new systems and new ways of working, but also just to, understand what was happening in these confusing times.
It's also a week that we were closing our Voyages issue, oddly enough.
Yep.
It's an issue that we have planned a long time in advance.
We wanted to consider doing something that acknowledged the time that we're in and the fact that we were doing a Voyages issue at a time when people can't travel. But the story is moving so fast that we really had no idea of the environment we would be publishing it into.
We knew that a strong candidate for the cover would be Mark O'Connell's story about disaster tourism in Chernobyl. This idea of what people can learn by going to a place where effectively life as everyone had known it ceased, and what people go there to find out.
In looking for an image of Chernobyl to put on the cover, there were a lot of options, but we ended up really liking this image of a swimming pool. And one of the things that we really liked about it was the detail of the clock that really gave the impression of a moment frozen in time where everything changed. And that somehow felt very relevant to what's happening right now in the world.
There's an eerie, haunting quality to this picture that I think it captures some of the dark fear that we have about this moment that we're living in right now.
This is a strange time to be closing the Voyages issue while we're all working at home remotely.
Nonetheless, we feel a real sense of duty to keep putting the magazine out in the way that we always have and trying to hopefully bring some insight and illumination to this changed world that we are all living inside now.
Thanks for playing that, Neil. We're going to go times. I love reading this out loud, though I will butcher a lot of it because I'm reading it cold. And this is unusual. This is the novelist Barbara Kingsolver and her from her timely forthcoming collection of poems. It's called How to Survive This. Oh, misery, imperfect universe of day stretched out ahead, the string of pearls and drops of venom on the web, losses of heart, of life and limb, news of the worst. Remind me again the day will come when I look back amazed at the waste of sorry salt, when I had no more than this to cry about. Now I lay me down, I'm not there yet. And beautiful poem by Barbara Kingsolver. Her collection appears in September, but I guess they decided to preview that poem because it fits so well with our times. The other thing I like to do in the Times magazine is also look at the ethics column. I don't know if they have one. They do. So I'm going to read one of these questions and see if our kids have
Ooh.
any thoughts on this. Let's see if we're doing this. Okay, this one is, I am a nurse practitioner working at a primary care clinic for low-income patients. One of my patients is a 16-year-old that she told me that she, this is probably too long a question here. Let me see if I can come up here with another question. Okay. I am a 40-year-old woman living in the Bay Area. I moved here from the East Coast in the 20s, established a career for myself, found a group of friends, and I'm in a relationship with a wonderful man. I don't know how much our kids will be able to tell us about this, but let's read it anyway. With a wonderful man who is firmly rooted here. Unless some significant change occurs, I foresee living here indefinitely. My parents, along with most of the rest of my family, have lived on the East Coast. We have always been close, but despite the distance, I see them several times a year. It may be that they're getting older or I'm getting older, but the distance between us has seemed more significant in the last few years. So I guess the question here is, am I giving up my responsibilities as a daughter if I'm not always there for my parents? And I see that, boys, I see that Samuel's family has really felt like you guys wanted to be together, right, Samuel? And that's why with you're with your family. So how do you think about these issues, about what you're going to, you know, in the post-COVID world, do about staying connected? Do you feel more connected now than you have in the past, or?
I would say I actually feel less connected to my family in general, because there's just so much time. I think a lot more time is spent on screens right now. Everyone is really trying to absorb as much news as possible. As well, like, I'm also spending a lot of time on online school, which seems to actually, to me, and I think Dio also take up more time than regular school. But I think also the fact that we're spending a lot more time in person counters that, despite the fact that we don't have as much time to spend that in-person time with each other, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. What about you, Diego?
Well, for me, I obviously that was a very long question, and I'm not sure I can answer it, but I can say that spending more time with my family is a good thing, but also in some ways a bad thing, because it's great that I can see my parents more and talk to them more, but I can't actually see and talk to them more. Because my mother just got sick and she's over in the other room, kind of quarantined in there, and I can't talk to her as much. And I'm coming down as sick myself, so I'm stuck to this room, and I can't really like talk to my parents or to my sister as I would like. And even before that, I feel like what's the anxiety and the stress that we're all feeling at the same time is making us more irritable, and it's actually hurting our relationship with our family. In the time that we have together, it's good. And obviously I love being able to talk with my mom and to be with my father and my sister, as I don't normally get to during the school days. But it's not the kind of interaction that I would have liked.
Here is thank you for sharing that. Here's a recipe, and the question is, how did we come to think of the crepe as something intimidating to make? Boys, what is the first meal you'll want to eat after the lockdown?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Pizza.
Pizza. Okay. Are you guys still Are you still ordering in food, or no?
No.
Okay.
My dad kind of started stockpiling stuff a while back, so we have a lot of like beans and chili, and we're eating that.
Okay. And what's the first thing you're going to eat, Diego?
I would like a good pasta with peas and Alfredo sauce.
Okay,
Hmm.
sounds good. The boys have spoken. And here we're reading about the Chernobyl tourism, and learning to swim as an adult taught me more than I expected. So plunge into the unknown. Look at these photographs. Folks, this is the power of print. And that's why we do this show every Sunday. The author triumphant in Turks and Caicos in February. Water would get into my nose and I'd feel a failure. I'd survive a jump into the deep end and feel ecstasy. Beautiful article. We're going to move on. I want to do a time check. It's 9:54. And one of the things that I'm going to talk to Neil and the team about going forward is that we may want to extend the time of these things. If we're going to have a doctor on every week and our regular guests, we may want to add another 15, 20 minutes if there's interest from all of you going forward. So let us know in the comments if you'd like us to have a doctor every Sunday morning and our wonderful guests as we do each time. We're open to all ideas. We've got time, but we also want to thank our sponsors for being here with us, Muck Rack, as well as Tweepsmap and Strategy Focus Group. So thank you all for watching. Let's just go into the Sunday business. How not to invest during a pandemic. I've survived and even prospered through 4 stock market crashes, but nothing prepared me for this. This is my former colleague at Columbia Journalism School, James Stewart, wonderful business writer, and he's sharing his thoughts, how we got by, advice on getting through a crisis. Look at all these different people explaining what they did. And the Fed is mighty powers, but it's fighting a virus. And when home became headquarters, here's Sundar Pichai, the head of Google, Chuck Robbins of Cisco, Adena Friedman of NASDAQ, Stuart Butterfield of Slack. So these are the CEOs of these different companies, Albert Bourla of Pfizer, Mark Benioff of Salesforce. Look at that. This is a great equalizer, right? They all have different where they're working and different, obviously, places they're working, but the equalizer of bad webcams and things like that spares no one, as you can see. And armed guards for toilet paper and other stories. Just so much going on. And I want to read the James Stewart story very carefully. And to clarify, Diego's mom is sick, but it's not confirmed that she has COVID-19. Thank you. That's really important to note that. And we're cheering for her and everyone who is sick in any way, whether it's COVID-19 or not. I have 2 former students, both of them journalists, who have COVID-19. And before we go, at the end, I'm going to do a little tribute to a friend I've lost, the first friend, and I hope the last, Floyd Cardoz, the celebrity chef over at Tabla and Bread Bar and other restaurants. We're going to be talking about him. I'm going to ask my son Krishna to cue up the episode of Ugly Delicious in which he was there, and we'll see that on the way out this morning. The Metropolitan section of Faded Tragedies, Long Shadow. This is about the fire at the Happy Land Social Club that happened now 30 years ago. And dinner's ready in 40 to 60 days. So this is talking about how people are planting and what they can do. And which comes first, the chicken or the toilet paper? Stress purchasing is something that's happening. I hope you boys are not stress purchasing too much. Here's people traveling like this. So unlikely, right? To imagine those are the kinds of ways in which people are traveling. I also like reading the social cues section of the Sunday Styles. And so we'll ask the boys also this etiquette question. I take yoga classes at a small studio. They've moved classes online for the time being. The online classes are free, but the studio suggests a donation of $5 per class. I've been laid off of the pandemic, and even though $5 sounds like nothing, I have no idea how long my small savings will last. Is it wrong to skip the suggested donation? Boys, Samuel, you go first.
I don't think it's wrong. It's necessarily wrong to skip a suggested donation. I mean, especially in this time if I mean, so donating to a charity is always important. But you know, in this economy, if you can't manage that, then don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a request, and that's fine. So it's a suggested donation. I think that's the right way to go. Here's the answer from Philip. He, the columnist, he says, take the studio at its word. For now, classes are free. If you feel uncomfortable not making the suggested donation, email the studio manager to discuss your predicament. Let him or her know you'll do your best to make it up to the studio when you're back on your feet. For those who can afford to make more than the suggested donation to small businesses you value, now is the time. We really are all in this together. Great advice from Philip Galans of the New York Times. In a pandemic, I love you can mean goodbye. This is the Modern Love column. And then I love reading the tiny love stories, because they're short enough that I can read them. For 1 week in 40 of his springs, my father searched the shore for shells. My sister tried to keep up. My brother drew in the sand with sticks. I followed behind, collecting the broken shells my father tossed aside. Now we guide our father's hands over his old treasures. I read shell names aloud. Pier Whelk, Leafy Jewel Box, Ponderous Ark. Suffering from Parkinson's and dementia, my father simply listens, closes his eyes and smiles. Soon my siblings and I will search the shore once more, desperate to find what the sea and my father have left behind. What a beautiful, beautiful little story. And by the way, boys, did you notice the names of these shells? They're so creative, right? Pear Whelk, Leafy Jewel Box, Ponderous Ark. I love that.
That's
And
a beautiful story.
yeah, look, Monica, Diego's mom, says, I've not been able to get tested. I'm in New York City at this time. Only if you're not breathing, you get tested. I have all the symptoms, but I can still breathe. Monica, we're all here for you guys. If you're watching, everybody watching, hit like on her comments. Let's send her some positive energy right now. And in that, send that positive energy to all our friends all over the world. And our brothers and sisters are suffering right now. And we want to send her positive energy, Monica. And Dennis, thank you. You folks have raised a wonderful son, and same here in Samuel's family as well. We're looking at the vows section. This is obviously pre-CDC warnings against big gatherings, a glorious celebration. And this was a wedding of an Indian wedding, Aryan Agarwal and Arjun. And planning a home wedding, here are things to consider. Folks and boys, I wanted to ask you, one of my twins have their 17th birthday coming up. Unfortunately, it's right in the middle of all of this. What do you suggest I do for them? One of them goes to, both of them go to Diego's school, by the way, but they're older. What should they, what could I do for them as their 17th birthday? What would you want to do for your birthday if it was all indoors?
Yeah.
I mean, indoors and locked up like this.
Kind of, yes, also gonna answer the question, but kind of related to this, I know that our school, as well as apparently your daughter's school, some kids created a virtual version of the school on a video game, and they're gonna do graduation at the virtual school. So I thought that was a really creative way to deal with the fact that they won't be able to have graduation, to kind of virtualize it in order to make sure that everybody gets to participate. But I feel like there's really like no replacement for being able to have a great birthday party with all of your friends. But something that I feel like you can do is I always appreciate when my parents just like sit down and like have a day with me where I get to make the choices and stuff, and where I'm not cleaning. So I think maybe just giving them like a day of your like time just dedicated to them goes a longer way than you would expect. And your kids care about you. And when you give them the time that they need and that they want and the attention, it really helps. Another thing that you could also do, I'm not sure if this would quite be the same, But I know I'm planning a kind of little get together with my friend over Zoom, and we're gonna like time when to like click the play buttons on all of our separate Netflixes, so we can watch the same movie at the same time from different places. Which I thought that was kind of cool. It wasn't my idea, but I thought that
I
was
love it.
really
I love
good,
it,
good
Diego.
way to do it.
I want both of you to give us one recommendation each for something on Netflix that you're watching that you like.
Oh, um, I don't feel like there's a Sam. Sam, would you like to take this one first?
Oh yeah, I have a lot to recommend. So for Netflix, this show, I don't know, it hasn't come out recently, but there's like, well, it relatively recently, Atypical on Netflix. It's one of the Netflix originals, and that already has 3 seasons, and it's about an autistic high schooler who is trying to get a girlfriend, and I thought that was a pretty good show. And I had never watched it before. I'm sure other people have definitely watched it, but I recently started The West Wing on a recommendation from a friend. So that I think lasted for quite a long time. So there's tons of content on that. And then for other streaming services, on Disney Plus, there was a new show that my family and I recently binged called Diary of a Future President. And that's about like a smart Latina in middle school who does grow up to be the president, and it's like her challenges in middle school as a nerd.
Thank you. And by the way, people have already nominated both of you for POTUS, so you should know that, I think. In the comments, they've done that. So I'm going to say goodbye to, oh yeah, we've got some great comments on LinkedIn also that I'm going to pull on, but I'm going to let the boys go. It's already 10 o'clock. I'm going to do a little bit more here. But guys, leave us with some optimism and reasons for hope. We're counting on you guys. So each of you say goodbye and tell us how we can find you and find your podcast and cool stuff like that.
Okay. So I'd encourage everybody to just stay calm and get sleep. Because regardless of whether you're sick or not, getting sleep is really important. When you're stressed and when it's difficult for you to like keep everything together in your head. So sleeping a lot, and also it will end at some point, and things will go back to whatever the new normal is. So just kind of holding it out until then, and talk to your friends, call them, do whatever. I think this is a great time to connect with family or people that you wouldn't have seen normally otherwise, because since everybody is home, all interactions are kind of as easy as before, kind of. What I'm trying to say is that since everybody's online, everything is the same. So reaching out to people, like family members who you haven't seen in a while. I know I try to call my grandparents to like get their perspective on things or just spend time with them. And I think the most important thing is to just stay happy and stay not stressed.
Yeah. So
that was Diego. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'll just plug the podcast as you said, and then I'll answer the question that Diego so thoughtfully already answered. So I think the links are mostly in the description. But if you are a fan of Rick Riordan's work, I recommend you listen to all our episodes. But if you aren't a fan of Rick Riordan's work, like you're not a major fan, maybe you've never read books, I still recommend you listen to some of our best interviews, especially episode 21. That was an interview with an editorial director at Disney. And if you don't know what an editorial director is, that's one of the questions we asked. And so, but so all of those episodes is thehalfliterboard.com. But again, or in any podcasting app. But to answer the question, I think I kind of want to say 2 things. Like Diego said, like call family, make use of this time. Call your family. I started a project where I started calling my abuela to sort of record her memories. And so you can also just learn a new skill, download like a language learning app like Duolingo, or learn something that you've been wanting to learn. I don't know you guys, but whatever you've been wanting to learn for a while. I would also say, look on the bright side. If this virus had hit us 200, 300 years ago, there wouldn't be a cure in sight. So we're very lucky that doctors are saying, oh, maybe this might be over by fall, this might be over by late summer. And so that's I think what we need to kind of look at during these times.
And if I could say one more thing, yes, that's a great episode. And also, if you guys are interested, we are looking for sponsors. So that would be great if you guys just want to like give us a donation or like sponsor the show.
Do you have a Venmo account, you guys?
We don't have a Venmo, but we have a Patreon. You can find us at the Half Blood Report if that works for you.
Okay, nice. I would encourage you to get a Venmo account also.
We'll do our best.
Yeah. Will asked a good question that I'll end the part of the interview with these boys with. He says, what are 3 words that best capture what motivates you? His are curiosity, collaboration, community. So I'm going to ask Samuel, and then I'm going to ask Diego and say goodbye to them.
Ask Diego first. No, that's actually a very good question. I don't know. I think that's a question that any person could think about for a long time. But off the top of my head, I'm just going to say friends, family, learning, because those were the first ones that came to mind. Yeah, I like doing stuff with my friends. I love with my family. And I love to learn, not just learning in an educational environment, but learning by doing, be it making a movie or making a podcast or being on the New York Times read along. So,
yeah. All right. Well, I thank you so much, Sam. You are terrific. You're a smart young man. I know you're going to do really well. Good luck with everything, and take care of your abuela and all your family members. And if you can spread the word of what we're doing, we'd appreciate that. We want more young people
for sure
to join us on this mission of spreading good, useful information and being as helpful as possible. Thanks very much. And let's go to Diego for his 3 words, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. So I think for me it would be like connections, being able or like being able to interact with people, because I feel like that's very important to me, and I love getting other people's stories and points of view, because I feel like it expands how I'm able to see the world, and it expands my mindset and my angle on things. And I think it's great to listen to other people's opinions, and of course stories. Stories are so powerful. So I'd say like storytelling, maybe community or connections. And I think another thing is like looking inwards towards yourself and seeing how you can improve how you go about doing things. So maybe like meditation, community, and stories or storytelling.
I love that. I love that. That is awesome. Thank you. Thank you both. That's Samuel Bachman and Diego Gonzalez. Remember their names, folks. They're going to be your bosses one day. Good luck to you both, and good luck with the podcast, and keep in touch. Okay. And then I'm going to do a little bit more here. We'll let you guys go. Bye-bye.
bye.
All right, folks. I just wanted to go through a couple of things in the paper. The travel section, the vessels for virtual voyages. Thanks to Google Street View, my son and I took a tour of Charleston, South Carolina. You might get some ideas here if you go online to the travel section of what to do in these complicated times when you can't travel in real life. Here's a cover story of the book review, is a review of a book about MBS, Key to the Kingdom. And he's always relevant no matter what's happening in the world. And you're seeing, this is 18 the New York Times series that we profiled when it went live many months ago, maybe a couple of years ago, Girls' Lives through Girls' Eyes. This is 18. And I hope you loved the interview we did with the two boys. In the future, we'd love to get more young people on our show who are interested in the news. So if you have recommendations for anyone who should be on the read along, if you'd like to recommend yourself as to be on the read along, please write to us, sree@sree.net, sree@sree.net, cc Neil at neilparekh.org. And also, I need guests for our daily daily COVID-19 call, where I'm talking to folks on a daily basis. And next call is tonight at 9 p.m. I hope you will join me for that. Here's Shakespeare in a Divided America by James Shapiro, wonderful expert on Shakespeare. And in Gringolandia, an account of Frida Kahlo's formative trip to the US in the 1930s. So many interesting books, folks. I hope you're finding time to read and spend time. And look at this, children's book characters updated. I should have read this with the boys. Charlotte's Web search, Where the Mild Things Are. Care to join us for some meditative yoga? Injurious George Goes to Court. James and the Unnaturally Giant Peach, No GMOs. Frog and Toad Are More Than Friends. Yas Queen Slay. And The Glowy Day. It was a snowy day, but Peter was on his phone watching TikTok. This is perfect. Someone tweet that out. I'm going to just hold it here. If you don't have it online, someone tweet it out. Here's a screenshot. Take a screenshot, share it. That's great to have you all here. And before I go and say goodbye, I'll ask Neil to come in a minute just to thank our sponsors once again. We're so grateful to our sponsors for making this show so much more professional. There you see a little bit of the back end of what happens. But I want to go to the TV here and tell you a little bit about my friend Floyd. And you may have read the news this week that Floyd Cardozo